Welcome back. All right, news of the day video for all you fine people on the internet for your Tuesday, March the 28th. So the Boston Bruins, it could be a night of President's Trophy clinching. So basically, if they win tonight, and they could, it's absolutely possible because they've won a lot this year. And if the Canes lose in regulation against Tampa, which could happen, Tampa Bay's lost 4 in a row. It's possible they come out and they get a victory. That would clinch first in the conference and a President's Trophy for the Boston Bruins. This would be their fourth. And for anybody keeping track, the first three, Boston didn't win the Stanley Cup those years. Now, it doesn't mean you don't win the Stanley Cup if you win the President's Trophy, but of course, we haven't seen a President's Trophy winner win the Stanley Cup since 2013 when the Chicago Blackhawks did it. So there's that negative stigma to that, and it definitely means that for teams going into the playoffs, they know that that's the top dog in the NHL, and I do think that it fires teams up. Most recently, 2019, we saw that with Columbus against Tampa. Columbus came out determined from the drop of the puck in Game 1 right through to the end of Game 4, and they won it. So, yes, winning the President's Trophy doesn't mean that Boston wins much of anything in said playoffs, but it's been quite the ride. So we'll see how that turns out for them, but they could clinch that tonight. I haven't been getting into all the clinching scenarios when it comes to who could clinch what with what, because in the end, like we already know who's making the playoffs, so I'm not worried as much about the clinching. Just thought the President's Trophy was interesting. Vegas could clinch a playoff spot tonight, but they have 98 points. They're getting in. They could lose every game from here and still get into the playoffs. So, yeah, we'll again, is this the year the President's Trophy curse, as it's often referred, gets broken? No idea. But at any rate, there you go. Last night was a big night for the Oilers. We got a couple more big nights to come, though, because Draisaitl hit 300 goals. Kane and McDavid are both sitting at 299. So almost 300 for both of them. You've got to think McDavid will hit that 300 goal mark before the season's done, because he has to get at least one. I don't think he's going to hit 70. There's been a lot of talk about him getting to 70 goals. I don't think he's going to get to 70, but yeah, he'll hit 300 soon, probably next game. I wouldn't be surprised if Kane does as well. Now that Draisaitl's hit that mark, he will be using that passing, to which the NHL Players Association said he's the best in the league at doing. Probably try to get both of them. If he's on the ice with them, he'll probably try to get both of them that 300 goal mark. And of course, last night, Connor McDavid hit the 140 point mark. It is insane. And I think he will hit 150 points. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't, unless they rest him before the playoffs, which is possible. We've seen star players get rested in games before the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, in Edmonton, there's definitely something special going on when it comes to their scoring. There's concerns when it comes to the goaltending and how all that's going to shake out. But yeah, the Oilers do look dangerous this year. And with the addition of Ekholm on the blue line, things should go better defensively for them as well. Now, getting on to Ottawa Senators discussion and ownership discussion, and the fact that apparently there's 6 serious bids, and that in a couple cases they may be aware they have to raise the amount of money they're bidding for the team. Gary Bettman last night stated, and he also stated in other interviews, that there is no chance that the Ottawa Senators, whoever buys the team, will have the option of moving the team. The team will, if they move, it will be a move downtown. Interestingly enough, he basically hinted too that the LeBreton Flats might be too small, that parcel of land that's been talked about for an arena may not be enough. So, and we've heard discussions too about whether or not they would go to LeBreton Flats, or if there might be another location that works better. So maybe Bettman's tipping his hand that there will be a movement towards downtown, but it may not be where we thought it would be, which would be the LeBreton Flats development. But again, it will depend on who's buying the team. There may very well be an owner that says, you know what, we can make it work at Scotiabank, and they decide to renovate that building instead. So the Ottawa plan, the deadline of July 1st, Bettman kind of saying it's midsummer is where he sees it. July 1st isn't really midsummer. So, again, the process is still going forward. It may not be going forward as quickly as some might want, but you've got to make sure you do your due diligence for John Spano reasons. LA Kings, tonight could be another record night for them. They've already got a record 12-game point streak, which seems small for a team that's been in the league for over 50 years. But at any rate, 12 games, nice point streak, and they could extend it to 13 tonight if they get a point, which means overtime loss, shootout loss, or victory against the Calgary Flames. The LA Kings are playing some of the best hockey in the National Hockey League. I've seen plenty of comments about, well, the teams in the West aren't as good as the teams in the East, yada, 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 yada. And even though I've pointed out the record some of these teams have against the Eastern Conference, especially Vegas did very well against the East, that narrative's still going to be out there. My favorite comment was when I pointed out certain Western teams doing better against Eastern teams. The comment being, well, because Eastern teams don't take them seriously, so that's why the East doesn't. Oh, okay, sure, cool. All right. That'd be a great meeting before the game. All right, guys, remember, tonight we're against the Kings. They're from the West, so let's not try as hard tonight, guys, because Western teams suck. All right, let's do this. How did they beat us? Anyways, the Kings' 13-game streak, it could very well happen. The Flames have had their setbacks recently. Very inconsistent Flames. And again, they're within shouting distance of a playoff spot. The Jets have tried to leave that door wide open to keep things interesting, but it doesn't feel like Calgary or Nashville have had enough of an interest in really getting into the playoffs. So we'll see. Now, there's an interesting rumor that's out there, and I debated whether or not to put this on the board, but Russian Machine Never Breaks is reporting it as well. And so there's a couple different sources, and basically it's a Russian report too, so there might be a grain of salt to be thrown in there with it. But it feels like there's something to this. Evgeny Kuznetsov, there have been rumors about whether or not he's happy in Washington for a long time. And apparently, it's come out that he requested a trade from the Washington Capitals 2 seasons ago, and he would still like to be traded. And I mean, Kuznetsov's play this year hasn't been fantastic. Immediately, I expect people to say, oh, my team should go pick up Kuznetsov. Kuznetsov right now, 30 years of age, and his numbers have not been stellar. And I don't know if the Caps have looked to move him. I don't know for sure whether or not Kuznetsov has necessarily wanted a trade. I will say this. It is possible this summer that if the Capitals decide they're going to do some kind of a retool, his contract could be one that they decide they want to move. And there might be a team named Arizona that might be willing to pick up a contract of a guy who's kind of expensive, kind of on the downswing, that maybe they feel they can turn him around a little bit. So, Kuznetsov, if he wants out of Washington, that would be kind of interesting for this summer. But again, a player requesting a trade, a team doesn't have to trade said player, but the Capitals might be more amenable to making that deal, with the Capitals being outside of the playoff picture and not trending in the right direction. Because again, if you can move that contract and save that money and spend that elsewhere, I do expect people to say, oh, if he was with my team, I don't know. I've often seen, especially around trade deadline and when we get to free agency, people will get enamored with names. Why isn't this guy signed yet? And he's not the same player he was. We see that at trade deadline. Why did he get so little at the trade deadline? Why didn't he get multiple firsts and prospects? Because he's not that player anymore. So it will be interesting to see what the asking price would be for Kuznetsov and where he would end up. But at any rate, that is the report at this point, is that apparently he did ask for a trade. And again, with the Caps in their current position, it might be easier to make that work. Connor Bedard. So we'll talk about Bedard a bit here, because why not? His Pats are going to, Regina Pats are facing the Saskatoon Blades. That starts on Friday. Now, what's interesting is that the last time Bedard was in town, apparently there was around 15,000 people in attendance, and the building very often has had around 4,000 people in attendance. So people want to see Connor Bedard. He is projected to be an absolute superstar in the NHL, and everything about him is supposed to be elite in terms of his offense, his skating, and his hockey IQ. Very smart player. He's not an overly physical player. Doesn't have to be. Not a great defensive player. Doesn't have to be, especially at the age of 17, right? You want to basically have him play to his strengths. At the NHL level, they can work on his all-around 200-foot game. But Bedard, all of the discussion is around, how well he might play. The problem is that the Saskatoon Blades are the better team, and they are expected to win the series. And this is part of the reason why there was discussion about whether or not Bedard might want to be traded at the trade deadline in the WHL, because Regina's not seen as a contender for a championship in the Western Hockey League. And it might be nice to see Bedard go to a Memorial Cup and maybe win one, but it doesn't look like that's in the cards unless the Pats go on quite the run. Saskatoon does have the players that can shut him down, and that's the thing. You shut him down, Regina's not going to beat you. So that's what he's going to have to fight his way through, and so we'll see whether or not that happens. Kalen Lind was able to shut him down at the All-Star, the Young Stars game there that they have, the CHL Stars game. And so, yeah, we'll see how it turns out in the series and whether or not Saskatoon gets him shut down. But it's not going to affect his draft stock. Now, 2, 3, and 4, there's a lot of discussion about 2, 3, and 4. And I've seen, I saw an article yesterday talking about how Michkov should go at 3rd, at the very least. Fantilli, it looks like, should be number 2 in the draft and is seen as a star player in his own right. Leo Carlsson probably goes 3rd, but Matvei Michkov, though there's some concerns about passport, concerns about whether or not he would be, staying overseas for years and years to play. He eventually wants to play in the NHL, as I mentioned in a video not too long ago, but it doesn't sound like it's going to happen anytime soon, meaning probably 2 to 3 years from now. And so with the fact that Fantilli and Carlson are already turning heads, and there are others in this draft class that seem like they're going to be pretty darn good players, Michkov could end up being a steal. And coming back to the Kuznetsov argument, that was the thing with Kuznetsov. He dropped in the draft in part because, well, he's not coming over right away anyways, so we'll draft somebody who's going to be able to sign with the organization and play for us sooner. So we'll see how all of this shakes down when we get to the draft in June, but it's going to be a fun draft. So if your team loses in the draft, let's say Columbus doesn't win either of the draft lotteries and they draft 3rd, they're still going to get a very good player. The one comparison I saw with Carlson was Nick Backstrom, that he could end up being another Nick Backstrom type, just a really, really good passer, good skater. And that's the thing, right? They have to be good skaters to go high in the draft now. That's how guys drop in the draft. The two things that cause guys to drop in the draft, so when you talk about, this guy's a steal, how did he drop to the 4th or 5th round? Either they're smaller or their skating was suspect at the junior level. The other option being that they played in a lower league and maybe they dominated, but scouts didn't really trust it because they didn't see what they could do against really good opposition. But either way, there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.